Welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest joining us. Everybody please give a big welcome to Wilfred Owen. Thanks for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Wilfred? Well, I was born in France on March 18th, 1893, and I was killed in action on November 4th, 1918, almost an hour before the armistice was signed. The next day I was promoted to lieutenant. A lot of my poems have to do with war in the trenches and the gas that was used in those wars. I see. Thanks for giving us this insight into your life. I understand you have a poem for us today? That is correct. I'll be reading my poem, Dulce et decorum est. That's great. I've heard a lot of good things about that poem. Wilfred will read the poem once we come back from this short break. Welcome back. Wilfred will now read his famous poem, Dulce et decorum est. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5 nines that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams, you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch your white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the forth corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such a high zest to children ardent, for some desperate glory, the old lie, Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. That was an amazing poem, Wilfred. I really love the part when you said, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. It was a really creative way to say that someone was dying. The sound of choking really came through there. Thanks for the kind words, Tim. No problem. I always liked a good poem. Would you mind explaining what the poem was about for those that didn't quite understand it? Of course. The poem is about how war is seen as glorified, and the line Dulce et decorum est means it is sweet and right, which in the poem refers to the sense that war is right, which it is not. However, it does solve conflicts. I see, thanks for clearing that up. No problem. I love talking about poems and feel the message of this one is a good one. Seeing as you wrote this poem almost 100 years ago, do you think it still applies today? Oh, of course. There is still war today, isn't there? The poem has to do with war being portrayed as a good thing by governments, which I feel is still true today. Take the United States, for example. They're trying to find an excuse to go to Afghanistan to seize their oil, and then the catastrophe of 9/11 happened, and the American populace felt an invasion of Afghanistan was justified. I see. Can you give me some examples using your poem on how it applies to that? Of course. In the first line, Dulce et decorum est, that means it is sweet and right, which is how the general American populace felt about the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan after the events of 9/11. While I don't agree that the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan was due to oil, I believe it was more due to preventing terrorist activities. I can see where you can think that. I do agree, however, that governments put too much emphasis on wars and glorify them too much. Thanks for coming to the show, Wilfred. Anytime, Tim. It was a pleasure.